Hello on a Whim listeners, and welcome to episode 37 of the On Whim podcast. So listener,
we're changing it. We skipped ahead.
If you
episodes, is that what's happening?
I'm the reason why I'm laughing is because I'm sitting across from Grover in the wonderful Whim Indie recording studio. That is my room. And as I said, episode 37, his face just morphed. No, you did not lose track of 31 episodes. This would be season 3's episode 9. If you go back in Whim Indie on a Whim podcast and go back through our library, this would be in sequential order the 37th episode of the podcast.
That's great.
So, yay, we're middle aged.
Wow.
Yay.
Yeah, that is a lot of episodes.
Yeah, but for the, if the listener's been around long enough, they'll know that we didn't always start with an audio only format. It's only a more recent addition within the last 20 episodes. So
that's half of it.
That's more than half. So we went to audio only, and I think that was a change for the better. But yeah, I laugh because of
when Jabari's constantly distracted with actually playing the game over doing the podcast, and I would be listening to an audio only when I'm driving back, right? And I was like, why is there so much silence? Oh, and then you're explaining to the people listening to the podcast, yeah, Jabari's stuck on this gameplay thing, or he's doing this, or he's doing that. And I'm like, oh, well, doesn't make for an engaging podcast.
Yeah, and so I think this is the change for the better. But anyways, listener, I'm Paul.
I'm Grover.
I'm Shadoe.
And this time we are sans Jabari. He had some other prior commitments, and we'd hate for him to miss out on those. So
yeah, swap him out for me. I was out the last couple episodes.
Trade out the froze. It's great.
Yeah, I needed a mental break. I was working really hard. I was working really hard that episode. So the week those episodes were done, and I was like, I need some rest.
No, that's more than fair.
Mental health is very important.
I wouldn't be the mental health professional I was if I gave you a hard time.
Exactly.
About taking your break, right?
Yeah.
So
Fair enough.
something taking an indefinite break. That news that came out the week we were recording this episode is E3 is taking an indefinite hiatus. It's been the final had been concluded. Grover, you're our news source. You're the news anchor for this podcast.
At first they canceled the physical event, right? The ESA, the Entertainment Software Association. They canceled the physical event, and as of March 31st, I guess they didn't want to do it on April 1st for obvious reasons, right? On March 31st, they said we're canceling They told insiders that they were canceling the digital event as well, and I think that's for the better.
Yeah.
E3, and you two have been to E3 many times. It is not even in the last physical events that they weren't that good.
No, they weren't.
But we've gone into great detail on this podcast.
Yeah.
About what we felt is the direction that the ESA took with E3 and everything going on, right? We have libraries of hours of content on E3 at this point.
Right. But
and I think we all pretty much came down to is we enjoyed the social aspect of it.
Yeah. That was the one time our team got together. Like we all met in person. We have various pictures over the years. Mm-hmm. I got fatter from year to year.
Honestly,
I remember
same.
Yeah, that's accurate.
The first year I was like really skinny, and then you could just see the progression.
The developer weight.
Yeah.
The Silatria 30.
Yes, yeah. Ooh. Yeah. There, you can see like how when games get close to release, how developers they grow beards and stuff. Mm-hmm. I took it out on food, so, but yeah, Yeah, but seriously, it was a great way for our team to get together. We would all, meet up and have this big picture and we would go to curry places, curry restaurants in LA and
to enable the
Mexican
Lucia
restaurants.
30.
Yeah. Mexican restaurants in LA, and got to just talk and like, oh yeah, you're that person I meet with on Thursday nights for art meetings and stuff. So it was really cool. So we'll have to kind of, in my opinion, I don't think E3 is coming back. They say they're going to come back bigger and better next year, but they said that last year and the year before.
And the year before that.
Yeah. And with the way companies are doing, they're doing directs, right? Nintendo Direct, PlayStation State of Play and all these, earnings calls and whatnot. I just don't think that, that there's a need for E3 anymore. In my opinion, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on it.
So I think it goes back to the social aspect, right? If I remember, Jabari and Shadoe both said the social piece was a big part. I know Shadoe had their badassery moment of defending some cosplayers, if I recall correctly. Shadoe,
yes,
from the nerd horde. That was the green pass holders.
Was that the Persona?
Yeah,
the Persona thing. Oh, I remember that. Yeah,
that was the first year they let in the gamer passes that weren't stupidly expensive anyway.
Right.
Yeah, because anyone could go for the price of
like $1,000,
$1,000 or whatever it was. That was the warning on the on the back of your E3 pass was the replacement cost. I'm like, oh no, oh no. But Shadoe, what's something you'll miss from the trade floor? Not the social piece, not the din-dins, not the Silitry at 50 or whatever we're gonna call it these days. What are you gonna miss about E3?
Oh, I guess just being able to see some of the new games that are coming out or that are being planned, and not just from the obvious large AAA game studios, but from some of the smaller studios like the indie game developers that would have their games there. I'm gonna miss that because I actually learned about a lot of cool games that way. And honestly, I wish that E3 would have gone back to just being for developers only, because I understand why they opened up the floor to regular people, but I hated it. So that's what I'm gonna miss.
Yeah. I get that, and my part, what I'll miss is being on the same level with all these executives and different people from different companies, and I was standing inches away from greatness, even though the maestro Chris Nuno did introduce me to the composer of Halo, right? So and then being able to try the games before anyone else, that was a huge bragging point for a lot of my not studio core group of friends, right? Oh yeah, I've been at E3 and I say it like it ain't no thing, right? Where people are like, what? How did you go? Who do you know? I'm like, don't worry about it, right?
I used to brag about it too when I was in still in college. Everybody would be like, oh, did you hear about blah 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 game? And I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that when I played it when I went to E3. Just super casual, and then everybody would be like, what the hell? How did you go to E3? Oh yeah, I make video games.
And that's true. You do make video games.
Yep.
Yeah, we do the thing eventually. It just takes 50 pounds of weight gain and 12 years of development.
You only gain 50.
Only 50.
Wow. How do I take up that regimen?
I'm being kind. Especially for me. So the E3's gone. Might not come back.
Yeah.
Might come back bigger and better. Might not come back at all. So
I'm ready to eat my words. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah. When we do episode 75 next year, I will. I'll say I was wrong in episode 37, season 3, episode 9. I was wrong.
You were able to say those episode numbers flawlessly. Yeah. Very impressive.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I kind of hope it doesn't come back because, like I said, I miss the old E3 where it was just the developers and not just, random people.
Oh, that's very
Yeah, I'm
I can
salty.
I can
I'm so
yeah,
salty
I
about
think
that.
we're all salty when I posted it again. The listener might have heard this in the previous episode, but I remember I posted a picture with a bunch of greenies surrounding me, and I posted it's like I don't like change, and everyone from the studio commented, "Yeah, I don't like the green passes either." The first thing John I think posted, "Yeah, I don't like them either," and
Yep.
I'm like, okay, so it's not just me.
Nope.
My downfall for E3 was that uh it wasn't even the gamer passes, I guess. It contributed to it, but I was in line for Assassin's Creed with our graphic artists and our one of our lead artists, and they're big Assassin's Creed fans. I was just like, okay, I'll help you. I'm I can help push people out of the way so you can get through, right? And I was literally shoved out the way because they were giving away those like helmets or something. It was for the Spartan one.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I remember that.
for
Literally,
Odyssey.
Odyssey. And
the
I was
lady.
done.
I was angry. So, well, I'm salty about this too. So, literally, the
Hmm.
lady was about to hand me one of those, and some rude AF person just snatches it, and it was the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want one, Shadow? I got one for you if you
No,
want it.
I mean, I don't know what I'd do with it now, but like, it was just like, how rude can you get? Like, she was literally putting it in my hands, and some dude bro was just like, yoink, this is mine. Like, sir, where are your manners? Like,
Raised in a fucking barn.
Yeah. It was our graphic artist first time at E3, and she was happy. She was like, "Wow, this is amazing." And I was like, "This isn't." I was done. I crossed my arms. I sat down and at a table. I'm like, "I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to do it. You go on ahead. I'm done."
So I have one distinct memory of E3, and I'm not gonna name no names in this point, right? Of this episode, but I remember, for the listener's sake, if you have been just barely tuning in, me and Grover, we have a friendship that goes back. What is it now, Grover? 20 years?
Yeah,
It
it's
feels
almost 20 years.
almost 20 years at this point. I met Grover our sophomore year of high school. Shadow, you were a freshman at the time. I didn't get the honor to meet you yet.
I met you and Shadow the same year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I met Grover in high school, and we became friends at that point, and we've been friends ever since, right? Me and Grover and our group of friends, we have quite the reputation for roasting each other, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yep.
completely mutual, completely consensual. There are times we go too far, and we as friends respect each other and how far we can go. And we've had one-on-one conversations before, like, "Hey, that wasn't cool, man.
You
Don't
crossed the line.
You crossed the line,"
Yeah.
and then we're like, "Okay, I'm sorry," and then we move on and we roast about something else, right? Like it's at the end of the episode, of what's that, like those TV shows. We had a good time tonight, but let's be serious. Let's talk about X, or talk about Y, or talk about Z, right? So let me preface by saying that we're friends, and we're going to be friends, and we're going to roast each other because that's just how we do, right?
Yeah.
So here we are at E3, and it was either me or somebody else within our friend group roasting Grover, right?
Yeah, we were at Norm's, I think.
I think we were at North. Yeah. It never closes, right?
Yeah. It was we were in East LA or something. Like that.
Oh, I remember that. We were
Yeah.
I don't remember whose car I was in. I think I was in the backseat of your car.
You got there
It took us,
somehow.
Yeah. It took us forever to like figure out where we were going.
I think you were riding in my old car.
Yep.
Yeah. And the Escape. Yeah.
The Escape.
Properly named. Anyways, and then I remember either it was during this dinner or sometime after that someone new to the studio pretty much called out me, and I'll just say it, and Matt.
Yeah.
And pretty much ripped into us. How dare we talk to Grover this way?
Yeah.
We have no business talking to him. We're disrespectful. He's our boss, which I think at that point I laughed, which was inappropriate.
Yeah, well, that was the wrong response. Yeah. That was absolutely the wrong response. Because it took you by surprise. Yeah. You're like, is he being serious? That was your response to it. Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, I'm a co-founder. Like, he is my boss technically at that point.
We're each other's bosses.
We're each other's bosses at this point. You know, I sign the checks and Grover approves the budgets, and it's kind of one of those, and Matt and Jabari, of course, as well. But that's how we do, and we've gotten along this way, and it caught me off guard. I'm like, oh wait, you're being serious.
Yeah, probably not the right thing to say either.
No, probably not. I think
in hindsight,
but I think it was either in person or it was in writing. I forget, it was an email or Slack, or it was through one of these methods.
It was right. Yeah, we had just started using Slack at that point.
Yeah, so I think it was via Slack, and it was a very strongly email or message, right? Yeah. And the way Grover responded, it was kind of like what I'm talking about. Like, hey, hold up. We had a great time tonight, but, you know, here's what and Grover's like, no, this is what we do. We go back and forth, and this is, you know, I'm okay. They're okay.
Yeah, I didn't take any of the roasts personally.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, if we did go too far, he'd tell us, right?
Yeah.
But
and I told him I appreciated this person for sticking up for me. Mm-hmm. But if I had a problem with it, I would say something.
Yeah, but then you were also roasting us in something. So it was like one of those like,
sometimes I have some really good comebacks. Sometimes I'll just eat it and just like nod in silence. Sometimes I'll come back with just
like my regular cry.
It really depends on
like for my normal cry.
It's one of those things where timing is everything.
Yeah,
right? But no, he had like if I was really like feeling like I was taking the brunt of it, he had a very valid concerns for bringing this up, and I don't want to write him off as like he was out of line or anything, because that's what you're supposed to do. If there's a hostile work culture or something like that, you're supposed to say, hey, I'm not okay with this. You know, I'm definitely having issues with it. And I definitely don't want to feel like what he said was out of line. But it was one of those things where it's like, we should have done a little bit better on, okay, this is how we are, rather than just kind of introducing him to it. And then it's like, oh, okay. You know, I didn't realize I with this team that's so mean to each other. Right. And setting off that kind of
precedent. Yeah. So just to relate to bring Shadoe into this, when I first met Shadoe, we were not friends, right?
No. We tolerated each other.
we worked. I presented the agreement to Shadoe. Shadoe signed it, and we were professionally cordial. I think it would be at that point.
Yeah.
Right? And it wasn't until we like started going to E3, I think we started becoming friends and finding similar topics and finding out that we're both nerds. And I mean, according to Shadoe, I'm normal and whatever that means. But right?
Yeah.
So, but I remember telling Shadoe at one point we were at the studio when we were still in person, recording in person.
Oh yeah.
And I told Shadoe, I see you as a professional. Mm-hmm. And Shadoe, like, don't get me wrong, if you feel this too much by me saying the Shadoe, feel free to cut. You like almost took offense to it. Like, no, I'm gonna change how you see me, Paul. And I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. And I'm like, and then I think after that moment, and I think you made a Facebook post about it too. Like, Paul, see, I'm gonna break this, you know. And I'm like,
I'll show him.
And I was like, wait a minute, isn't this what I'm supposed to do? Like, treat my essentially people who work for me, right? Because, you know, again, I'm the co-founder, administrative director, human resources, whatever my hats are.
Yeah.
Isn't this how I should treat people, right? And Shadoe's a very unique case, but it's one of those things like, should I not talk to Shadoe? Like, it like caught me off guard. But then after that, we started becoming more friends, and I forgot all about it at some point, right?
I think my reaction was more of like, whoa, you know, like mind blown. Somebody thinks of me as professional. And that's probably why I reacted that way, was because I was still in college. So also, you just, I was young and dumb. So you should certainly treat people who work for you professionally. I have grown because I
Yeah.
don't think I would have said that 10 years ago.
Oh, for sure. None of us probably would have.
I developed Celatria out of a place of insecurity because people kept telling me like I didn't know what I was doing. I was this, and arguably I still don't know what I'm doing. But debatable. But I've kind of like Shadoe. I feel like I've kind of grown into that position because of all these war stories we've had to deal with in dealing with game development and these different projects and whatnot. But with Celatria, I started making that because kind of like what Shadow's like, wow, nobody's treating me as a professional. They treat me as some dude that doesn't know what he's doing. And, and this was in college, right? All my college peers, I was the stupid one. So
Oh man, me too.
exactly. Yeah. So, so I
No comment.
wanted to do, I wanted to do Celatria to get myself out of that. Right. And it worked, right? There's just been so much that I've learned just by working on stuff on my own.
Yep.
So.
Also, Paul, keep in mind that working for the studio was literally my first job ever.
Oof.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Because I didn't get any job like right after high school. Like my parents were just like, no, there's no way you can go to college and have a job. You will not do well. Which I mean, I kind of rolled with. I mean, I was slightly offended at the time about that idea, but in hindsight, they were definitely right. I don't think I would have been able to handle both. So, yeah, you guys were my first like actual job environment, so I had no idea how to behave. Which would certainly explain a lot of my threats. Don't you dare touch my audio equipment or I will rip body parts off of you and give it to the ladies outside.
Lady is a very interesting term you use for that. Like what I said last episode, negotiable comfort.
Yes.
Our
negotiable affection.
Just for context, and I am not joking when I say this, our studio was in the red light district of San Bernardino, and we've had some very questionable people outside of our studio. So, yeah, that was bad.
I mean,
good. It helped build character. Anyways, so what it comes to me realizing, with Grover bringing me on board as this administrative director, the coming with the title and the responsibility, I could establish these lines between treating someone who at the time was Shadoe, was a colleague, was my contributor, someone who worked for me, right? And then there's Grover, where I treated him like my friend.
Yeah.
Because that's who he's always been. And the lines didn't blur. Like, when we have admin meetings, we're still having fun and laughing, but then there's a time to be serious.
Yeah.
Right? And we know when those times are appropriate. So for me, as someone who helps run an indie studio, or as people will tell you, I run the indie studio.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true.
Yep.
Yeah.
Without you, Paul, I don't think we would have gotten this far.
No, I've the highest praise I've gotten, I'll say it once, I'll say it again, is from River Kanoff.
Yeah.
And he said this is one of the most professional outfits he's ever worked with. And I'm like, that is like praise from Caesar at that point, right?
He reiterated it on Twitter a couple months ago. I was just doing like a Whim indie did you know kind of thing on Twitter. And I said, he was supposed to be a temporary character in Celatria. We gotta bring him on the podcast.
We definitely have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're listening, River, hi River.
Yeah, well, we definitely got to bring him on. But he was originally going to be a temporary character, but I found his voice so entertaining as portraying Lewis that it's like we have to write him into the whole game. He's the comic relief. He's the one who calls out the absurdity of these situations that these characters go into.
Oatmeal plot.
Oatmeal plot is thick.
Extra thick.
Extra thick, yeah. And so, and he has been nothing but great working with us. He's been very patient with us dealing with Celatria's really long development schedule, and but he still thinks we're just the most professional studio he's dealt with, and he's worked on several games, several high profile games, and so that was really a compliment coming from him.
Yeah.
And
If he's listening, River, you are probably one of the most professional voice actors I've recorded.
That's true.
We'll at him when this episode comes out, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
River, join the podcast. Come as a guest host.
One of us.
Soon. Anyways, so me as someone who runs an indie studio, right? I've done what I can to set a professional bar, right? Mm-hmm. And yes, I did treat Grover. We roast each other, right? But that's just our friendship, our relationship, right? And then here comes this outsider coming in and saying, "No, you can't be like that," right? Yeah. And then I hear stories of our more successful brethren in the indie field, right? And I'm reading these stories, these exposés, these investigations that pretty reputable video game journalists, is that the appropriate terminology?
Several video game journalists,
as dubious as a title that could be because of corporate sponsorships and whatnot. Anyways, not to discredit anyone at all. I'm not here to get sued, allegedly, right?
Yeah.
I'm reading these cases of work cultures in some of these indie studios, and let me just describe one of them as being where they spoke casual racism, sexism, and rampant bullying.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I'm just, it dumbfounds me. Another one, founders were overly critical and regularly unprofessional and offensive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And someone who has a background in human resources, and I've said this on a podcast before.
They needed a Paul.
And everyone needs a Paul.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Grover's gonna write it. Grover's gonna write this book one day, and it says chapter whatever is gonna be.
No, you have your own chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. Get a Paul.
Get a Paul.
Get a Paul. And I know toxic work environments exist. I've been part of them in my background, right? Not my current job. My current job is probably like a dream compared to where you came from, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that there's people that have to deal and drag themselves to work every day in the indie field, right? And the indie field prides itself on we're not no corporate stooge. We're gonna do our own thing and set this bar and
fight the big man.
Fight big AAA and all that stuff. And I'm reading these things, and it's just one studio implemented a policy for meetings with one studio head to be able to come to an immediate end with the safe word pause.
Wow. That's ridiculous.
So that I'm like what?
You should not need a safe word at your workplace unless it's like you're a neurodivergent person and that's just how you function, But as a general rule, you shouldn't need a safe word to talk to your boss.
No, absolutely not. And especially someone at that level within a company.
Yeah.
So a founder, a head, a lead. I could not even imagine someone coming up to me and saying, I can't talk to this person. I need how do I conduct business with this person?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even know where to react, because anyone we put in a lead position at this point has been with the studio for so long. It would be like, I'd be offended that I didn't know this sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say with our studio's culture, there's been times I would get into arguments with team members. It's not that they're not comfortable talking to me or anything, but we would get not into fist fights or anything like that. But
verbal sparring.
Yeah, but it's like I just about design decisions in Celatria. Like we've had, I think our most interesting one so far over the mundane of how is agility abbreviated, the agility stat. Like one person's like, it's got to be AGI, and I'm like, it has to be AGL. And we would just have a day conversation about it, and things like that. And then there's some things that like when you would talk with Shadoe, right? Your recording is like, no, these lines are terrible. Who wrote this? Who wrote this trash? And then you guys would just change it, right?
Yep.
So I don't think that would be anything that like. None of that is abusive. That's just the way we talk to each other. But when kind of like what you guys were saying, like if you have to have the safe words and people are like insulting people personally, right? I think feedback should always be at the work, directed at the project, as opposed to directed at somebody or somebody's performance.
Yep.
In my opinion.
Also, consider that like we all know each other from like high school. Even if we didn't hang out in high school, we all knew of each other and like, oh yeah, that person existed. So like we're friends. But when we're talking to people who are like in the studio who aren't necessarily like friends, they're more coworkers, we tend to be more chill and professional.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So like we definitely have those like workplace boundaries with people who aren't part of that like circle of, people we just constantly, I don't know, bother.
I think you brought up a really good term there, boundaries, right? And I think that's a constant theme. I know, Paul, you were referencing Moon Studios. They developed Ori and the Blind Forest, and that's kind of what kind of inspired this topic. But Activision Blizzard, what are the other ones? There's a bunch of different. Activision Blizzard's the other one that comes to mind. It's like a lot of these developers didn't have boundaries, right? And kind of what you said, Shadoe, a safe word is not a boundary.
No,
that's not appropriate.
No, a safe word is you are either on the borderline of crossing my boundary, or you have trampled over it and invaded it. Yeah.
Like,
and
to get to that point means that they've ignored so many boundaries that they had to put that wall up. Like that should never happen.
Yeah, the other ones, let's see. Mountains, Fulbright, Funomena?
Yep.
I think
close
that's
enough.
It. Yeah. And Moon Studios. They all have like that was the expose on these other indie studios. So
another large studio isn't Riot Games.
Oh yes.
They're always
I can't believe
news.
I missed that one.
Yeah. Like every time I think because I see them post jobs all the time on like, LinkedIn, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll apply this time. But then like a week later, I'll see another article like, oh, they're being investigated. I'm like, geez. Like, I feel like that studio just needs a lot of help.
Well, I remember getting from E3, Riot had a little booth, and they had Sierra remembers as well.
Sierra remembers, yeah.
Sierra, Pepper's Farm remembers. Where they were handing out little tablets, like notepads, right? But on the notepads were like terms of endearment, like attaboys or attagirls or attaperson, right?
Yeah. You had a
and I had a little, and I wrote notes for when someone was kicking ass, particularly,
or you said about a sarcasm,
or or whatever was going on. Yeah. And I remember people would treasure these, like like praise from Caesar, right?
And this was before Riot went into all their
debacles, right? Yeah. So at one point, Riot was very pros, a lot of boosting people up, right? Praising people, and then just for me to see something like that, and I hear the investigations, and I'm like, what happened, right? It's funny when you give someone a modicum of power, it goes to their head. Like, ever try to give a teenager mod rights to a Reddit subreddit? Subreddit.
Well, that's what I appreciate about you, Paul. Whenever I feel like I'm high up in the clouds, you kick me back down to earth. So and
Keeping you
I'm
humble.
not saying by roasting or anything, but it's just like you keep me grounded, right? And sometimes I keep myself grounded, right? I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little too optimistic about this. We need to be more realistic about our chances. But so there's sometimes I get so excited about something like, oh no, come back down. You'll pop the bubble. You'll have the shotgun ready.
Pull.
Pull. uh, so
Yeah, and but it's not kind of my aim is not to get. I see aim. See what I did there?
yeah.
My like a Shadow's awesome laugh.
Yeah.
So my what I'm trying to do is okay. I love these ideas. Now, how are we going to execute them? Right, and it's putting pen to paper, putting it all down, and then once we're seeing what are the pros, what are the cons, what's the timeline, and then I think by doing that, I take the fun out of it, right? And then I'm not excited about no more cross arms over chest, slight pouts. I don't want to do it no more.
Yeah.
And like I didn't say not to do it. I said let's take a what's it called, a hard look at it by the numbers. Let's determine statistics that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Let's quantify this, right?
Yep.
And then let's make it work. And if the answer we can't make it work, then guess what? We move on to what we can work on.
Yep.
Yeah.
You take the dream and you try to make it reality, but sometimes reality is not up to the dream.
Fair. Very fair. And that's that's where we're at with, how the studio is set up. Right.
Yep.
But yeah, I think just some things to take away from this is just that, indie studios, you can't use, we've been friends forever as an excuse for not having defined boundaries of respect, right? It's important to respect one another. And it's important to kind of, if somebody's not okay, they need to bring it up. And have these boundaries without resorting to, oh, if you've already crossed them, or using the word pause or anything like that. You define boundaries that are expected of each individual when they start working with you.
Hey there, weary listener. I didn't see you come in. Come on, sit down for a spell and enjoy the listening comfort that is the On a Whim podcast. The On a Whim podcast is brought to you by Whim Independent Studios. It's brought to you by our various products we have available for you to wish list. Over there, you see that wall over there? Yeah, the wall past your wall, your stack of shame that you got going on. I want you to add to it. Go ahead and wish list Celatria and Spellbearers on Steam. And when they come out, we would like for you to purchase them. It would be a great way to continue allowing Whim Indie to do the awesome and work on the awesome things we're doing, such as the On a Whim podcast. We also encourage you to go to our and join our Discord. Go ahead and go to discord.gg/WhimIndie. Yay, Traveler! See, I've been working on this, and I think it shows at this point, right? I hope. Anyways, Traveler, listener, you could be anywhere else listening to podcasts. I'm glad you're here. Go ahead and join us, rate us, and go ahead and wish list our products. It's good to have you.
I think we've been good about that as a studio, though, because I know we've had just, anytime you get a group of people working together, sometimes they clash. And I know we've had small issues pop up between studio members that we were like, okay, this person said something that is not okay. How do we approach this so that it doesn't happen again? And usually, I think it's just like the people our studio attracts. Like, we're all pretty good at being all like, "Aha! I see what you did there, but that is not okay. Please don't do that again."
Oh yeah, we've definitely had a few situations.
I mean,
about that.
We did. And I know we have some people that don't really work with us anymore, but I think that's because they kind of had more of the bro attitude as opposed to our open, accepting, diverse attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I can appreciate that, Shadow. I can appreciate, we setting up these things in place. Believe it or not, Whim Indie does have policies in place. See, Sierra remembers.
That's right. Policies. You tell them, Paul.
Policies. And I remember when I created policies and the looks of groans and like, really, Paul? We need to have policies.
I remember when you first came up with our policies. I think it was after some kind of incident happened.
Oh, it was definitely because of a certain incident within Whim Indie.
And then you like told everybody, do not be the reason we have to make more policies. And then I just kind of sat there and thought about it like, oh no, I hope I don't make more policies.
And stepping back, when Grover stepped down being the Las Vegas chapter of the IGDA, the International Game Developers Association, I had a slideshow. I was the last speaker under his tenure. And in this presentation, I wrote down, have policies or your personal policies in place. So when things happen, you know what you need to do because these policies are in place. You're not just acting on pure emotion, right? And when it comes to the biggest things, the non-negotiables, of course, sexual misconduct, abuse, harassment, unreciprocated, anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
the basic HR no-nos.
The basic HR no-nos. But as we're seeing in all these other indies, they're not just no-nos, but they're like hidden and buried and encouraged and enabled.
Yep. Which is really weird to me, because if you're a company, you have to follow laws, and a lot of those HR no-nos are laws. It just baffles my mind.
Yeah. Mine too, Shadow, as someone who has got their HR background and securely in place. But it kind of begs the question, is there any way, introspectively speaking, Whim Indie could always be better, right? Mm-hmm. And do you guys have any ideas how we can set a positive culture where maybe we're not attracting these dude bros who come in, yeah, I am the shit, and what, right?
We've kind of improved quite a bit in the last couple of years, because my philosophy, and I think we all kind of shared this philosophy, is like, we bring in anybody who wants to work on games when we started, right, for the first couple of years, and and with that you get a lot of good people, but you get a lot of bad apples, and we went through a lot of bad apples, and in the last couple of years we've kind of really gotten, especially since we've had to close the physical studio location and work remotely. One, there's a lot less of, we don't see each other face to face as often, right? So there is a lot of less of like, oh, we don't know how these people are. There's some people, we don't see. At first I did video calls, right? But we don't really do that anymore, especially with like art and sound meetings. There's just too many people. So we just have, sound only, right? And, some people have joined us since we've gone all virtual, they don't know how we really are. And they just know us in a professional context, right? So if it ever gets to the point where we ever work in like a physical studio or something like that again, it's important to know, like, they have to have those boundaries set in place, kind of what we were talking about. But we've kind of upped our ante in basic requirements for, we don't have this bring in everybody mentality anymore. Yeah.
How about you, Shadow? What are your thoughts? What the dogs are my cheering section, right? Listener, welcome the Whim Indie Dog Orchestra.
Yeah.
Playing you the song of their people.
Go Dog Orchestra.
The Doggo Orchestra.
The Doggo Orchestra.
The Whim Indie Doggo Orchestra. Yeah. Love it.
They're co-hosts at this point.
Yeah, they might as well. We'll credit them in the. We'll credit them. So Shadow, what are your thoughts on where Whim Indie can improve?
So, I actually think that we're already kind of leading the way on having a good studio experience overall, because I mean, well, for one, we're not in the news right now for like investigations of all kinds of problems. So woo. Um but
That's a good baseline expectation. That's awesome.
that is a good baseline expectation. Um but I think it's also just because we tend to learn from our mistakes, and that's always been like just how the studio functions is like, well, we done effed up. Where do we go from here? And so like even in the past when something like an issue would occur, we would figure it out and come to a solution so that that problem didn't become a problem again. So I think as long as we keep doing stuff like that and constantly trying to be better, then I think that Women Indie will just, constantly be above all of these other studios that are clearly not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And I mean, at some point, it's just being a decent human being,
Yeah.
treating everyone with the respect they deserve. I mean,
Yeah.
one of my contributors, or one of the people who work for me, come at me sideways. My first reaction is not going to be, probably I'm going to laugh at them like, "Oh, you're being serious, right?" Because just that's how I'm going to react. That's how I'm going to react to a case like that, right? But then I'm like, "Oh, okay, how can we handle this, right?" And, at that point, I put my HR mask, my HR hat on. I'm like, "Hold up, let's what's going on? What's the issue?" Right? And at that point we explore what the like what you were saying, Shadow, the possible solutions, and try to come to an agreement at the end. And then if we can't remedy it, then maybe Womendy's not the place
Yeah.
for
Well, and kind of adding to what Grover said, we're not just letting anybody, come and work for us anymore. Um, and so I think, and in general, we tend to attract the kind of people who have this kind of, oh, I want to be better than I was yesterday kind of mentality, like live and learn, as opposed to, well, this is just how I am. Whereas I feel like some of these other studios, they have that bro culture mentality.
mm,
Um, that is unfortunately what a lot of game developers have. So, I mean, that whole like toxic masculinity side thing, that's definitely like a huge thing within our industry. And I think that like leaches out into just behaviors throughout like people who work at these studios to the point where it gets out of control. So, I don't know. I think that's just a huge problem within the gaming industry in general that is slowly starting to change. Especially because now with like the internet and people calling each other out, like now we know about all of these issues, and now people are challenging the game studios to do better, to be better. So I don't know. I don't think we necessarily need to do anything better than what we're doing. I think we just need to, I don't know, continue to have our let's grow and be better than what we were whenever there's an issue.
You brought up a really good point when you say that, Shadow, and it was actually something I was thinking about while you were talking. Um, so in at the beginning of the studio, um, I did not really know how to communicate with the artists, and I didn't say this in a way where I'm like insulting them, but I did not know how to give proper feedback. Like, oh, I don't like this. This is off a pixel, or this is off this, and I didn't really know and how to give that feedback, right? So I took it upon myself to learn some of the art terms. And one of our lead artists, bless her heart, she and I'm not saying that sarcastically, I'm not saying that in a southern bless your heart, like really, like she gave me a list of art terms that, like, this is what, when you want to say you don't like this, you're talking about changing the contrast or changing the intensity or changing this. I was like, oh, okay. So I studied up these art terms and learned how to communicate with artists better. And I also got a book. It's a really good book called Talking to Artists and Talking to Programmers. And one half of the book uh, shows how to give constructive criticism if you're on a programming side, on how to talk to an artist. And the other the other side of the book is if you're an artist, how to talk to a programmer, like, oh, this gameplay mechanic doesn't look well with my art. How do I give feedback? It makes some generalizations about both groups of people. That I it's not out of line, but other than those, like some of those generalizations, I think it's a really good book to read. I might link it might link it to a response on the tweet or something when this episode goes live. Another thing that I wanted to talk about too was constructive criticism, right? I appreciate the team members most on Whim Indie that say, I don't like what you did, I would improve it, and here's how I would improve it, instead of just saying, oh, this is crap, right? One of the in that article about Moon Studios and Ori and the Blind Forest, that studio head didn't know how to give constructive criticism, and he would just say, this is trash, or this is bad, and he would just walk off, storm off. And the other founders, I guess, would come in and say, oh, he's just like that, that's just how he is, it's okay, and normalizing this behavior. And I don't, and it shouldn't be that way, right? The co-founder or the studio head should take it upon themselves, like, I don't like this, this is how, or I don't like this, or I don't like this because XYZ, this is how I would improve it, can you make these changes to it? And turn it from a insult to constructive criticism. And I'm dealing with this in chapter 4 of Solitria right now. We're internally testing it, getting it ready for release. And I'm asking one of the team members, I said, go through chapter 4, play through it. I want your brutal but honest feedback that is also constructive. I don't need to hear this is crap. I need to hear, I don't like this because this. That way we have an action plan on how to fix it and make it better. Because insults don't help, but coming up with some kind of plan that helps build people up, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and like another way that like you can approach giving criticism is to be like, explain, hey, I really like this, but this section here, or like this thing here, could use some improvement. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, this is shit, and then walk away. Like, that doesn't help anything. Like, if you want it changed, explain what you want changed, but also build up your team members. Because, like, happy people make better quality games. So, like,
Agreed.
if you want your team to be happy, you should tell them the things that you like what they're doing.
Yeah.
And to your credit, Grover, you taking and quote unquote going out of your way to pick up books and learn the nomenclature and learn how to talk to artists. That says a lot about you and your leadership style.
Yeah.
That you're gonna take the effort, and they're not just peons.
Yeah.
They're not just your way to making games. Yes, there is a beneficial. You exchange their services for money, and I kind of weird how to saying that, but very mechanical.
Yeah.
Right. But there's the human factor in it, and you're gonna learn how to talk to them in their language. And then when they give you something that you can't use as a programmer, you can then translate into a language they understand, and they can change it and make the edits. But what it comes down to with all, Moon Studios and all these other ones, if you see Ori and the Blind Forest, just it's what people call a perfect game.
It is a great game. I've played
Story,
it is a lovely game.
Music, the visuals, everything.
I bought it for one of our friends as a gift, because I was like, he's an artist, and he wanted to get more into game art, and I bought it. I was like, this is a beautiful game. You have to play through this, So. And
then I'm thinking games like Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh yeah.
Rockstar
also
games. It's a
game.
Gorgeous game.
Absolutely.
Where I could my mom can walk in my room, see it, and mistake it for like Nebraska probably, or whatever.
My dad did that with The Last of Us. I was playing it.
Yeah. And it's amazing what these games can render in these consoles and these computers, right? But at the core, when it comes all down to it, you can make a beautiful game But if your people feel like shit at the end of it, and they can't function, and they leave mentally ill, essentially, they, very, very much weight on their shoulders, and some had to see therapy if you read into these different lines, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't okay. And so at that point, you can make a beautiful game, but if 60 out of your 80 employees are not going to render anything else, have quit the industry altogether.
Every big game, they're like, they either quit or they get laid off, or they burned out.
They burned out.
Yep. Well, like, here's just general good life advice that I've gotten through just like experience and knowing people who didn't enjoy what they did. If you go home from work crying more than once, I think it's time to reevaluate where you're working and find a place to work doing what you love. Don't let it get to the point where you're just like, F this, I'm never doing this ever again. Because that's sad. Don't let somebody steal your passion just because they're a shitty person.
It's happened to me. Not for Whim Indie, but it's happened to me on some other day jobs that I've quit. So I've been there.
Yep. I've never gotten to that point where I was like, F this, I quit. But I think that's also just because of the way that I am as a person. Like, I would never work at a place that I would feel like crap at.
Fair. I know my previous employer, I was not a happy person working for them.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
It changed me. I didn't like how it changed me, and I made myself to a place where I didn't have to have that job no more.
Yeah.
And I think what it comes back down to is, as anybody, just being a human being and wanting to be better and wanting to improve, right? But as we wind down this topic and probably this episode, I want to ask you both, what's the difference in your opinion between being brutally honest and toxic? Where's that line? And I'll give you both loading time, because as I tend to do.
Oh, I'm ready.
Oh, Grover's ready now, but I'll share mine real quick.
Sure.
The difference is how you deliver it.
Yeah.
And it's gonna come down to, what like even what Shadoe what said. This is shit, and then walking away. That is toxic.
Yeah.
That is it literally shit? Now, if you drew some shit for the horse to make on like Red Dead Redemption 2, right?
I would say that as a sarcastic joke.
Yeah. And,
yes, Grover. Yes, that is.
The pop plops, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where I would draw the line, right? What were you intending to do by saying this? Did you mean to hurt the person? Did you intend to hurt the person? If the answer is no, then let's reevaluate and see how you could maybe say that to them better. And if you did intend to hurt the person, what made you the way you are? Who hurt you? Like where is this coming from? And again, that's me as a social scientist person, right?
Yeah.
My background psychology. I just want to know what makes people tick sometimes. Grover?
I'll use an example. When I was developing Chapter 4 of Celtria, there's a desert that there's a dungeon you'll go through called the Endless Desert, and we had one of our testers play through it, and I had thought I finally figured it out. This is perfect. This is great. And he played through. It's like, Grover, this isn't fun. I am not having fun. I made it halfway and I got frustrated and I turned it off. And I was like, okay, all right. But I appreciated that, because I understood. I played through it and I was like, let me try to solve it, right? Let me try to do it. Where are they not finding fun about this? And I was like, I'm not having fun either. I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting lost. Just to give you, it's a slight spoiler for Chapter 4 of Celtria, but there's these sandstorms in the desert, and when you get thrown by the sandstorm, originally you got thrown into a random part of the desert, but because there's no map of the desert, you're just like, where am I now? right? And then if you got caught by another sandstorm, you get thrown somewhere else randomly, and there's 9 different maps. So it's like it could be any one of the 9 different maps that you got thrown to. And so they're like, I get what you're doing with this mechanic, and but it's not fun. So I evaluated his feedback. He didn't really give me feedback on how to improve it. But that wasn't really his job. His job was just to kind of test it, right? He's not a game designer. So I was like, okay, how can I make this better without tearing the whole thing down and building it back up? So I ended up changing the mechanic. So instead of the sandstorm throwing you to a random zone of one of the 9 areas, it just takes you back to if you guys know the zone line, like whenever you change between one of the 9 areas, it takes you back to that last area where you transitioned. So you'll know exactly where you're at. Like, oh, I'm back at start, right? And it became a lot more manageable, right? It's like, okay, I've seen this place before. Now I know where I need to go, right? And it's not as frustrating for the player. So I really appreciate like directing the feedback at the work itself, not at the person, right? He didn't say, Grover, why did you do this? Or Grover, you're terrible. Or Grover, you're this. He said, I don't, this dungeon is not fun. I am not having fun with this work that you've created. And he explained the issues, like I get caught by the sandstorm, I get thrown away, and I don't want to play it anymore. It is got, and our goal, no matter how frustrating something is we want the player to keep playing, right? We want the player to keep progressing and trying again. So yeah, just a TLDR, keeping your feedback focused on the work and not at the person.
Yeah.
How about you, Shadoe? Where's the line?
So, kind of, taking from both you and Grover, for me, the line is, with brutal honesty, like, it's still constructive, but it's very straightforward, and you're not attacking the person. So, because like if your entire purpose on saying something is to like make somebody upset or to embarrass them or to make yourself feel like the bigger person, then that is not brutally honest. That's just being a shitty person. Whereas being brutally honest is taking the fluff out of the words. So something we tend to do in our culture is we sugarcoat things so people don't feel as bad. In my opinion, being brutally honest is taking that sugar coating away and just saying something that's very straightforward. And I mean, Grover can be brutally honest, and I appreciate that about him, because to me, the sugar coating sometimes gets very confusing. So, like, that's the difference to me, is like, if your only purpose is to hurt somebody, that's not brutally honest.
That's a good point. And to build off what Shadoe said, a philosophy I do have with the studio is I'd rather take the honest criticism from the team. Because if we can't hear it from each other when it gets released, gamers are not I don't want to say all gamers. Because I feel like people have gotten a lot better about this in recent years, especially after games like Cyberpunk's 2077 would release. And it needed more time, right? But the normal populace, I should say, does not know how to give criticism that well, right? And I'd rather hear it from the team and see like we can fix it, as opposed to, oh yeah, it's good job, and then it goes out and it's not, right? But at the same time, I was like, how can this be better, right? We hired our game designer, one of our game designers, because he said, we challenged him. He said, I don't like this. I said, make it better. And he's like, nobody's ever told me that before. And then he made it better. He learned how to program to make it better.
Would you say he went to the Grover School of Spite?
Yeah, he did, yeah. and now he's working for a Fortune 500, tech company. So it worked out for him. But yeah. So we challenge people to make things better, but constructive criticism is important.
Yeah.
Well, that was a heavy meta episode. That's something else. Shadow, any parting thoughts or questions?
No.
Grover, thoughts, questions, concerns, caustic remarks. Want to roast me real quick?
No. I really liked Ori and the Blind Forest. I just want to say that.
Mhm.
And I wish Moon Studios the best. I hope that they do better. Because the talent that they had there was really top notch. And by being toxic to one another, they have really it saddens me because
Sure.
I had suggested Ori and the Blind Forest to my artist friend, and I have the sequel, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, in my backlog, and I still plan on playing it because there was this top-notch talent. But it's these allegations and these things that come out. It's hard for me to support these people when they say these hateful things and they do these hateful actions and they're destructive to our community.
So
right.
I'll ask you the question I asked maybe a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Does the body of work become tarnished because of the actions of a few individuals?
It depends, right? I listened to the episode where you guys were talking about the that Harry Potter MMO, right? I wouldn't play that for a lot of the same reasons that Shadoe wouldn't. But
hold up.
What?
You listened to the podcast? Oh yeah, because you weren't part of it.
I was in the audience.
Yeah, he was in the audience.
I was in the audience.
No, but you weren't in the like. You don't like to hear the sound of your own voice.
I don't. No, I wasn't. But I was in the audience when you recorded.
Go on.
Anyway, but a lot of that is based off of the universe of one person, right? One individual wrote all of that.
Absolutely.
Moon Studios and Ori and the Blind Forest is the culmination of a lot of different people, right? It's not just it's not just the game of these two founders that are assholes to each other, right?
And their employees.
Very important distinction there. Thank you. So it's not black and white. And like I have stopped playing a lot of Activision Blizzard games until the Microsoft acquisition goes through and Bobby Kotick is removed.
Sure.
But those games were built by different teams and subsidiaries as well. But it's blurry. It's very blurry.
Yeah. I think you have to take it.
I wish I could have a
case by case basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because like what Grover said, the whole Harry Potter thing, that is just one person's brainchild. And so I haven't played what's the name of the game? Ori and the Blind Forest. I haven't played it, but I'm looking at pictures from it and I'm just like, ooh, this game looks so awesome.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful game.
Like, I want to go and play it because in my mind, people who made such a beautiful game, or at least, beautiful in pictures because I haven't played it yet, like, those people can't be bad people. It's just the people who are in charge are the bad people.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to blame the people who actually made the game and hold them, like, accountable.
Yeah, and it just, again, it's one of those gray zones we live in these days, right?
Yeah.
And it's just an unfortunate place of life where, we have to make these distinctions, and where are we willing to, where is the line in the sand? Am I gonna cross this line because I want to play this amazing game made by amazing individuals? It's a collective sum of their efforts, right? Or am I gonna vote with my wallet and not support this craptacular founding people? I don't know. That's why I like to play the devil's advocate sometimes in these episodes of like posing these questions, and Grover gives me looks, right? And I'm like, but sometimes they're valid questions, If anything, I'm just stirring the pot a little bit. It's something I do, yeah. So, listener, have you any questions for Whim? Any question you want to pose to me? Grover, Shadoe, Jabari. I want to encourage you to reach out to us. Social media, YouTube comments, anywhere. And ask us these questions. Maybe we'll make an episode out of it. Answering fan questions and whatnot.
Ooh, fan Q&A.
Absolutely. See, Shadoe knows where I'm going with this. We're 37 episodes into this thing. We want to open it up. So if you have questions for us, please give us some questions. We'll be happy to answer them.
Post it on our Discord. You can
PG-13. Try to keep it PG-13, please.
Yes.
Other than that, I encourage it. Please, some interactivity. Like our posts, like our videos, a wish list our games. Join the Discord, discord.gg/whimindie. And yeah, we join one of us. Google Gobble and all that jazz, right? So, I've been Paul.
I'm Grover.
I'm Shadoe.
And this has been the On a Whim podcast. Y'all keep it nerdy.